events, this is just going to give you a list. If you want to look at current events, you've got that option as well, and that's only going to show the upcoming events. We'll go back to our main site. So instead of this being a calendar, I think we talked about this being a meeting schedule. So we'll just name it that. We'll name it meetings. Okay, so here's our meeting list. Now again, I mentioned under the announcements that some of the web parts have different views, and calendar is one of them. So if I go back to modifying my web part, and I look at current view, you'll see I've got all events, current events, and calendar, same as you saw before. Now if I change this to calendar, it's going to give me a little warning here about changes to the view, and I'll click OK and show you what that warning really means. You see here, this view, kind of alters the way our screen looks. So some views maybe aren't the best unless you have a bigger screen than I do, because now your content's over to the right-hand side, and I personally don't like having to scroll to the right. Makes you less likely to use that stuff. But I want to show you what all your options are. So for the sake of our demo here, we're going to turn this back to all events. In this way, with all events, instead of having everything listed all down below, you've got a little icon for whether it being a recurring event or not. I don't need to see one of these for every week as long as I know it's a recurring event. If you want to add links, the options for links are fairly basic. You put in your link, you put in a description, and the description is what you're going to see when you mouse over it. So for example, we'll do smartservices.com. And this is the Smart IT Services homepage. And down here you can put any other kind of notes that you might. Again, this is a good place for having, say, usernames and passwords that the agencies share for these resources. So there's Smart Services, and if you mouse over it below, you'll see that it does go to www.smartservices.com. If I click on that, it will take me to the page. If I was connected, of course. So we showed how to add some content, so let's do that. We're going to create, and let's make a picture library. We're going to call these agency pictures. And do you want this picture library to display in the quick launch? We'll say yes. And this is the versioning option that I talked about. Anytime you're in a section that has versioning, it'll give you this option when you create it. Now don't worry, if you say no now, you can always change it and say yes later, and I'll show you that too. So we're going to say no, just for the sake of changing it later, and we'll create it. So we go back to our site. You'll notice the picture library is not here, but we did choose to add it over to the quick launch, so you can see it here. But I really want that in my main page too. So like we mentioned at the beginning, that's where you come into the editing mode. So under Site Actions, we'll go to Edit Page. Organizing a Windows SharePoint site is easy as just dragging and dropping. Say we happen to want our meetings, instead of below company bulletin, to be above, you simply drag and drop, and now the order's changed. To add our web part, we'll click on Add Web Part on the left-hand column, and this is going to give you a list of all the web parts you've created. So we've got our agency pictures now since we just created it, so I'm going to check that box and I'll click Add. And now we've got our agency pictures as well. So I like things how I had. I'm going to put company bulletin back on top, and I'm going to put agency pictures at the bottom. We'll click Exit Edit Mode, and now you see you've got your agency picture library. I can click Add a New Picture. I'll browse for a couple real quick here. And you can give some details to the picture, a title, date taken, and so forth, and we'll leave those fields blank for now. So like I said, it's similar to a document library, but the pictures is just going to give you a thumbnail as well. If you have lots and lots of pictures, you can go in here, you can view them, click on it, and you go to your picture properties. And again, just like you saw with the announcements, you can edit, delete, manage permission. If you have different copies, you can manage those copies if you're doing the versioning. The checkout feature is something that you'll need to be using if you're going to do the versioning. When you check a document out for editing, Other people opening the document are only going to have it open as read-only. So it's very important to remember, if you're going to be editing a document you want to save back, make sure to check it out first. Because also part of the check-in process is going to be entering your notes for what happened in this version, so you have those notes if you ever want to retrieve an old one. So we'll go back to our team site, and we're going to make a documents library as well, some place to store our procedures. And we'll call these procedures. Create a version, yes, we'll do a version, we'll leave on quick launch. And you'll notice that you've got a document template. And what this means is if you're in that library and you click new, it'll automatically open that program and launch it in new document mode. You can always change that later as well. So we'll create our library, we'll go back to our team site, and we're going to edit the page. We're going to put this on the left under links. So here's our procedures. Move it down to the bottom, and exit edit mode. So here's our procedures library. I'll click add new document, and you'll see here's our version comments. So this is our rough draft. And we're going to upload a file and say OK. Now if you've got Microsoft Office installed on your computer, I'm doing this from a demo server right now, so I don't. When you click add new document, you'll also have the option to upload multiple documents at once. And this is what's going to make it easy to transition from where your documents used to be stored, say on your F drive, to putting them on your SharePoint. Now when you do put your documents in SharePoint, they're not going to be linked to the F drive or your C drive or your My Documents or wherever you got them from. You're actually making a copy of those documents and putting them into SharePoint. So if you decide that you're going to move your documents over to SharePoint, you're going to need to take them off the network, maybe lock them down so people can't open them or edit them or move them somewhere else, because then you can have a disjoint. Some people might be modifying in SharePoint, some might be modifying right from their desk or right from their server. So I'm going to go into the procedures. With all documents in web parts, all elements in web parts, if you highlight, you'll notice that you've now have a little box around your item and this drop down that says edit. So you can do a couple things from here, and this is where you would access your version history. I'm going to check this document out. Then I'm going to open my document. Let's make a little edit so you know what I'm doing here. And we're going to say test. Yes, we'll save our changes. And then we're going to check our document back in. And I'm going to say this is our first revision. And keep the document checked out after checking in. No. So I checked version history on my document, and now you see I've got two of them. Here listed are my comments, so this was our first revision. If I open up the document here, you'll see the other one. Actually, I didn't save the document, but this is how you would see your multiples. So as you can imagine, as you build up lots and lots of documents, this is going to be a very useful tool. Okay, so that's the basics of just adding web parts and customizing your home page. There's lots more you can do. What I want to do is get into some of the site settings. So I'm going to go again to Site Actions and Site Settings. And you can get into site settings from every individual site you're on. People and groups, this is where you're going to set up your people. It'll automatically pull your users right from your Active Directory. So you do need your Active Directory on your network to use SharePoint effectively for permissions. Title, description, and icon. You'll see I've got the options just to change this. Right now it says Team Site. So we're going to say this is our intranet homepage. And what most agencies do when they start using SharePoint is change the policy on the network so it automatically becomes all users' homepages. Kind of gets people into the routine of seeing it and getting used to being there whenever they start up their internet.